Hello there. Just about as soon as the new Chancellor made his speech to Parliament, speculators turned on the pound and it began to tank. And being British, people straight away worried about house prices. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. And why not buy a mug with my mug on it? An Englishman's home is his castle is the well-known phrase, and that is borne out every time there's even a flicker in the markets. People straight away worry if houses will be priced forever beyond their means, or if they may be unable to pay their mortgage, or if it will enable them to add to their buy-to-let portfolio, or if they might be forced to sell. Yes, it is said that in the UK we are obsessed with home ownership and constantly checking up on property prices, and the current sterling turmoil caused by Kwasi Kwarteng's announcements on Friday has caused this property-based worry to move into hyperdrive. And with talk of interest rates hitting 6% next year and mortgage deals being pulled hand over fist by the lenders, there are growing fears of a coming house price crash, and those fears could be justified. Although to call it a crash would imply an overnight event, whereas the more probable scenario will be a hefty slide downwards over a period of time, maybe years. Also bear in mind, politicians don't like house prices going down. It reeks of a failing economy. That's why they spend so much of their time coming up with ever more outlandish policies to drive house prices ever upwards. They like to think that Brits are sat smugly round the dinner table with friends in the evening, quaffing champers and celebrating how much their house had grown in value over the last 24 hours. But the percentage of homeowners was 71% in 2003, and it's now about 63%, mainly due to many people being priced out of ownership, so they're forced to rent, with many accepting they will never be able to save to buy a house because high house prices automatically means high rental prices. They are intrinsically linked. So fewer people every year will sit smugly at the dinner table with their mates discussing house prices. But that property-owning smugness could start to turn into alarm if a combination of high interest rates due to a falling pound and rising inflation gets much worse. The already dwindling pool of first-time buyers with the true wherewithal to purchase could start drying up. Yes, there would still be a lot of activity and a lot of viewings, but scant offers that actually get anywhere. And we would see the return of the phrase gazunder, where the prospective buyer lowers the amount of their offer just before the exchange of contracts, as opposed to gazump, where a new buyer comes in at the last moment with a higher offer. That one, though, will be out of fashion. Mortgages would be harder to source, and the lenders would tighten up on their requirements. And those hoping to remortgage might find that in the eyes of the lender, the value of their house has slipped, so you can't borrow sufficient to refinance at a good rate. There are also mortgages out there where the loan-to-value percentage has to be adhered to. These are normally associated with buy-to-let mortgages. So if the lender thinks your house has gone down in value to a figure that makes the loan-to-value percentage go outside the agreed threshold, then the borrower would be expected to front up with a wad of dosh to make up the difference. For example, say the house was bought for £200,000 using an interest-only mortgage, with a maximum loan-to-value on the mortgage of 75%. And the purchaser paid £50,000 in cash and borrowed the maximum available of £150,000. But then the market starts to go down, and the lender then reckons your house is only worth £180,000. Then the loan-to-value dictates that the maximum mortgage has to be £135,000. That means the borrower has to pay £15,000 off the mortgage in cash. But if that clause exists in your mortgage, you should be aware of it. Now, houses are illiquid. They are not easy to sell. It's not something you can get by wandering into a supermarket for a couple of minutes, then come out with the keys of a £400,000 house. No, it takes time. And that is why house prices won't crash so much as slide downhill. But every time they do slide a bit, new buyers emerge and take the view that now is the right time to buy for them. It's their decision. And that also helps to keep the process more of a slide than a crash. And even where people end up being unable to make their mortgage or rental payments, the repossession process is never immediate, especially if children are involved. And especially if the government takes the view that these are very difficult times, so repossessions are put on hold, just as they did during the pandemic. We could see that again. Now, what this period might do is make homeowners realise that the property they live in is a home, not an investment. Because people who live in a large house right now, hoping to downsize and get a large wedge of cash in the process, might find themselves disappointed in the coming years. Because they might either have to put that plan on hold, awaiting a market recovery, or take far less than they were hoping for, because the smaller house they're going to move into won't have gone down as much as the big house they're selling. Not because they've gone down by the same percentage, but because the smaller properties will be more sought after and are more likely to hold their value. But there are new players on the block. Some big lenders are getting into the bulk buy-to-let business. And this particular period, if it leads to a drop in house prices, could almost have been engineered for them to come in and hoover up the properties of distressed buyers. Now, another way of slowing the house price slide would be to invite more people into the country, people needing a place to live, so sparking even more competition. That would then kickstart house building, all bolstering the growth Liz Truss is after. The recovery of the UK built on house prices. How apt. Seriously though, the Truss gamble could actually pay off. And if it does, and that's a big if, then there will be little to worry about except servicing a huge national debt. But if it goes seriously pear-shaped... And finally, a little snippet. The Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton, Rupa Asher Hook, has been suspended after a rather distasteful comment she made about Kwasi Kwarteng. That she merrily said this in public is disgraceful. However, I would doubt there would have been an eyebrow raised if she'd called someone like me superficially white.